And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
You're a super successful entrepreneur, and you're obviously diversifying into new things. But let's start at the beginning with Thriller and sneakers. When was that kind of light bulb moment for you when you knew that this was to be more than just a kind of pastime hobby?
You know, I've told the story before, but I think it comes down to, I'll just take you back from the top. When I was about 16, you know, I spent a lot of time outside of school doing things that I probably shouldn't have been doing in terms of, you know, waiting in lines and trying to get the most exclusive sneakers and the most exclusive items that I could get my hands on them, sell them as quickly as I could for whatever I could make. And that sort of grew 16, 17. When I was about 17, I just became completely disinterested in normal academia, and I started to pursue this full time, and I did quite well with it. And then I think just a point came where it wasn't sustainable anymore. I mean, I could do it, and you know, it was making money, and it was quite interesting, and I was having a lot of fun. Obviously, what 17-year-old wouldn't be having fun doing this? But at some point, I think I just sat down with a couple of family members and said, you know, this is great, and I have found something that was of interest to me and something that I knew quite well. And we decided to, you know, test it out for a solid year. So we gave it a year. We sat down with a couple leaders in the industry, and we put together a small MVP, which has now grown to the marketplace we know now today. And within that year, the growth was just phenomenal. You know, I realized that I wasn't the only 17-year-old or 18-year-old or, you know, any youthful guy or girl in Dubai or in the country that was fascinated with these limited edition items, sneakers, clothing, all these brands, the artists that were representing them. And the success that we generated from the MVP was phenomenal. And I think at that point we decided, okay, this is less of an idea and more of something that's concrete, something that we can actually run with. And I think about a year after we started the MVP, then we started putting some serious money into it. And then we decided, okay, this is what we're going to do full time.
Yeah. Now, how did you get access to limited edition drops and sneakers that other people couldn't?
At that time, it was a bit difficult. There were a couple options. I think people would mainly divert to online sales. So they would use sort of something called bots, you know, where you just log on multiple accounts and try and get as many pairs as you can online. You had the physical aspect, which is what I did most of the time, where, you know, I sort of left school and started waiting in lines outside of stores 3-4 hours at a time, just to get your hands on 1, 2, 3 pairs. So there were multiple ways, but like I said, I mean, while it was fun at the time, it's not sustainable. But you know, if you look at some of these videos, Justin, people wait 30 hours to get their hands on one pair of sneaker, right?
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily for the money. People genuinely enjoy the culture. It's something that they'll wear and keep and cherish. So it's something unique.
Yeah. And then I guess, you know, looking at the industry now, how has it changed? Is it harder to make money in the industry because there's now more people doing it, or there's less limited edition sneakers?
It's definitely a lot harder. Obviously, the opportunity has imploded on itself tremendously. I think when I started off, the market cap for the industry was about 8 billion. Fast forward 5 years to today, now it's projected to be about 45 billion by end of the year. So it's, you know, definitely exponentially grown. But at the same time, it is harder. There's a lot more competitors. There's a lot more people that want probably the same amount of items that were produced 5 years ago. So you've got a pool of, let's say, at the time, 1 million people who wanted something that was only produced at 20,000. Now you've got a pool of 10 million people, but the pool is still 20,000. So it's definitely a lot harder. But you know, I think the opportunity has grown for people who are starting off today in different industries. When I started off, sneakers were the main thing. Now sneakers are not the main thing. Now people are more focused on watches, you know, bags, collectibles, other forms of exclusivity that wasn't necessarily what it once was.
Yeah. And is that the way you've gone as well? You've expanded into luxury watches and more high value items?
100%. Yeah, we've had to sort of diversify because at some point you can't just do the same dog and pony show. It has to change. It has to innovate at some point. And that's what we did about 2 years ago. We sort of foreseen the decline in sneakers a bit before everyone else. We knew it was coming. It was inevitable. And that's when we started branching off into limited edition clothing. So we work with a lot of retailer brands. We work with a lot of up and coming streetwear brands, you know, homegrown brands. We work because these brands are also tapping into the exclusivity market. They're not mass producing. They're keeping things quite limited, keeping them quite exclusive, and at the same time high quality. So, our customer base has definitely taken a liking to, homegrown brands that are exclusive more so than luxury brands that are mass produced while also exclusive. So, yeah, I think now, whereas 5 years ago we used to serve only the sneaker market in majority, now we serve about 12 different categories, which we never thought would happen when we started.
Yeah, out of those 12, which ones are kind of the ones with the most growth potential?
Definitely clothing. We've also got watches, so your high-end watches, brands such as Rolex, Audemars Piguet, Richard Mille, those sort of brands. Then we've also got bags, so obviously your Hermes Birkins and Chanel 25s and all these high-end luxury brands. So I'd say if I had to rank it from 1 to 3, I'd give clothing number 1, I'd give watches number 2, and bags number 3.
Yeah. Without kind of putting you on the spot, name me a kind of homegrown clothing brand that you really like.
So I wouldn't necessarily call this homegrown as it relates to UAE, but there's a brand that I've taken a liking to actually before we started working with them called Denim Tears. So Denim Tears is a homegrown UK brand. They started off in London, actually started off with a guy from the US called Tremaine Emery. And he's just this revolutionary, young, artistic, very creative guy from the US. He started the brand in London. And, it's just grown phenomenally. It's simplistic. It's not overly done. There's no big logos. It's just patterns and designs and artistic abstract art all over his pieces. That's one that I've really taken a liking to, and it's probably our top 5, if I'm not mistaken, sellers on the platform.
Yeah, no, that's great. So that's also important to you to try and find actual Emirati or Dubai, UAE based grown companies and champion them as well.
100%. It's good to support the country that supported us in a sense, because obviously Dubai has facilitated a lot of the success that we now have achieved. So, looking out for homegrown brands, especially one started here in Dubai, and then, in turn playing our small part in promoting them is definitely something that we try our hardest to do. It's a win-win. We love promoting, local brands, homegrown brands, and they get massive, reach and popularity from it, and we love it.
Yeah, I can see a very impressive Richard Mille watch on your wrist.
Yeah.
How many watches do you own?
It's a good question. I've recently got into watches. It's sort of being a fad. I can't say I own more than I think it's 7 at the moment.
7 watches.
Yeah,
okay,
getting there.
I was expecting a much kind of higher number, but no.
One day.
One a day.
Exactly. We'll reconvene in about 2 years, and then we'll have a watch.
One a month, maybe.
100%. There we go.
Now, what generation? You're Gen Z.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Gen Z, obviously, in the whole sneaker and that kind of culture there. What about the kind of older generation? What do you say was the biggest myth about the older generation when it comes to things like sneakers and collectibles that they're probably not kind of understanding?
It's a good question. I think one thing people maybe misunderstand or mischaracterize about Gen Z buyers is they're not after anything and everything. So when I say that, I think there's a misconception that our buyers will just buy anything that a brand they like will drop. That's actually not the case. There's a lot of history, there's a lot of artistic and a creativity element, if you will, to it, that actually fuels the exclusivity, that fuels the craze, that makes people say, okay, this is something that I want on top of everyone else, on top of everything else. I'm going to, put in the extra effort or put in the extra money to go get it. So, our buyers don't like being sold to. They don't like when brands capitalize on the exclusivity that they've built and just start dropping anything and everything with no thought into it. Buyers actually won't go for that. So a big misconception is just they won't buy anything from a brand they like. It actually has to have some thought into it. It has to have some exclusivity factor. Yes, is important, but some creativity factor, something unique. For example, partnering with an artist, or having a celebrity's name attached to it, or having some history behind it, or partnering with a brand that you like. People have been partnering with brands from all different facets. For example, Prada and Adidas partnered. Right? That's not two brands that you ever thought would partner. Swatch and AP recently partnered. These are brands that in your wildest dreams you wouldn't think would be working together, but they are working together.
Yeah, absolutely. So they want that purpose, they want that authenticity, and they want collabs that kind of are different and unique for them. If you were going to do a collab with somebody or a brand, what would you choose if you had the option?
It's a good question. Is that in any category?
It could be any celebrity, from obviously Travis Scott is well known with Nike, Michael Jordan. It could be any celebrity, sports star, it could be any brand. Who would you love to do an X collab with?
It's a good question. We're fortunate enough to have ticked off a lot of celebrities, but one that we're still in talks with. I can say that hopefully we will be having another discussion soon once it's confirmed. Is Drake. I think Drake would be an interesting one, especially with his connection to the region here in the UAE and the Middle East. I think doing something that sort of combines our heritage or the UAE heritage with Drake and his following and his popularity would do quite well.
Yeah. Now you've obviously rubbed shoulders with a lot of VIPs, a lot of entrepreneurs, founders, CEOs, and celebrities. Who kind of stands out for you as in the biggest takeaway and the biggest lesson when you met someone and spoke to someone that's kind of stuck with you?
It's a good question as well. Jason Derulo is the first one that comes to mind because, we meet a lot of people in various industries and most of them are key industry leaders. For example, if we meet an artist, he's the key player in the music industry. If we meet an actor, he's the key player in the movie industry. However, when I met Jason Derulo, expecting him to be the key player in the music industry, which he is, he's also the key player in a lot of other industries. I think when we spoke, and this is public information, he owns about 28 companies, right, in various industries, from fintech to payments, etc. So he was definitely very interesting because he gave me a unique take on using his brand to sort of leverage the companies that he was working with or the companies that he is involved in. Another one that we met with quite recently in the beginning of this year was actor Ryan Reynolds. He's also very involved in his telecom company. And I had the opportunity to sit down with him over coffee and just discuss in terms of how he managing the telecom company with obviously his big profile and acting and all of his upcoming movies and TV shows. And the perspective that you gain from some of these people is unique. Definitely very valuable.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I never would have put Jason Derulo and fintech in the same conversation.
100%.
But as you said, so 20 plus companies, into things, growth industries, and diversifying his portfolio, because you never know when people might not like his music anymore.
Exactly.
He's still got other things.
Exactly.
What's the kind of industry you're likely to get into next?
I think it would have to be something with agentic AI. Something with either AI or AGI, artificial general information, something along those lines. We're already using it and utilizing it in various number of operations in all of our companies, but I think coming soon, we're going to have to start making things a bit more local, making things a bit more native, starting up our own agentic companies, because that's just the future. I think there's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I mean, you can't not have a conversation now and not an AI, whether
Agreed.
it's just a normal friend-to-friend conversation or in the business world. AI obviously
Agreed.
is now so important. They're just integrating into companies, and I don't think a lot of people understand agentic AI really. So there's a lot of education around that.
100%.
Now, you describe yourself as an entrepreneur and a cultural participant. The entrepreneur bit I can get. What do you mean by a cultural participant?
I think when people who classify me like that, I wouldn't necessarily classify myself as that, but I guess someone who is involved in the industry. In other words, I am my own customer. I guess you could put it that way. Most people, for example, they would not necessarily be the person that they're selling to, which in very many regards is a plus, is a benefit. I think it's a double-edged sword to be your own customer because sometimes you don't see the flaws in your own work. So I guess what people would refer to when they call me that is I am very much involved in the end use case of my product. I understand very deeply and very intimately what people are expecting when they buy from us, what service they expect from us. And like I said, it's a double-edged sword. While it does have its cons, it definitely gives me a keener insight into what we could be doing better as opposed to our competitors who don't really know what their customers come to expect. It definitely gives me a bit of an edge to improve, adapt, and innovate in every aspect of our business be product or service, from the initial onboarding to the final delivery of the product. I guess I can fine tune it in a way most people can't.
Yeah, and of course we're sitting here in this lovely building, and in somewhere where there's a lot of dynamism, and it's a very entrepreneurial city. Would you have been able to do what you've done in any other city, do you think? Or Dubai is so unique, it could have only been Dubai that you built your businesses?
Yeah, I don't think there are very many cities where you could do what I've done in terms of the cohesiveness of starting everything, in terms of the connections and network that you're able to make. That I think because Dubai is relatively new, it's sort of become a fast hub for innovation. That's why people are moving away from, let's say, California, Silicon Valley, that sort of areas, and coming towards Dubai. I think obviously the no tax aspect is a big plus. I think the type of brands and companies that have moved here gives you already a head start as opposed to starting somewhere else. So I do think Dubai is a phenomenal place if you're looking to start something. I know I have benefited greatly from choosing Dubai.
Yeah. Of course, it's very entrepreneurial and it helps companies set up. But, what you've done and what other founders have done here is not without challenges.
Yeah.
It can be tough to be a founder, to build a company. What would you say has been your kind of biggest challenge, or maybe set of challenges, along the way?
Yeah, there's a lot of challenges. One that comes to mind as you ask the question is when we started out about 2020, just after the COVID bump. We were in an area where our burn rate was actually quite high, and we were burning through a lot of cash. And that was at quite a critical moment where we were trying to find our product market fit. And I think for about those 6 months, that was probably the most difficult time of the company. That's sort of your make it or break it time. We were a relatively small team, didn't know each other too well. We were all sort of fighting and working towards the same goal. At the same time, we were trying to find product market fit as well as burning through heaps amount of cash daily. And, the sort of conundrum with a situation like that is every day that passes by, the clock starts ticking and ticking. And that eventually, if you don't figure things out, time will run out for you and for the life of the company. So, for those 22-hour work days and for those late nights, early mornings, multiple meetings, those 6 months were probably the most difficult. But I think that's what made us. That's what sort of forged the company. I think after that, no one took anything anyone did for granted. Companies would look at us differently. Our customers saw that we were here to persevere. And it was a difficult time, but I think that's, what made us.
Yeah. And what kind of currently motivates you now? Because there comes a point where it's not financial anymore. It's something else. What really gets you out of bed and motivates you to keep on building and keep on growing?
I think at the moment now, at the stage that we're currently in, it's just serving and helping as many people as we can. Initially it was obviously just trying to survive the next day and the next day and the next week and the next month. I think now, given the phase that we're in, when we've got hundreds of thousands of customers that we're servicing worldwide, it's just about ensuring that we can use our platform, like I said, also in serving those hundreds of thousands of customers, but also supporting homegrown brands, supporting, people who are starting up like how we did, supporting local brands, supporting and working with some of the biggest names in the industries, making sure that, yes, while we are the number one marketplace in the Middle East, let's not stop there. We obviously have the ability and the capability to be the number one in the world. So until we get there, I think that's sufficient motivation.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier, we talked about collaborations. You had the AP and the Swatch, which went crazy, and
Correct.
People were, fighting over them in kind of Dubai Mall,
Yeah.
the boo-boo, stuff like that.
Yeah.
How do you position yourselves with these crazes? Like, do you try and get an inside track first, as soon as possible, or just interested to know how you kind of position yourself when such a big viral sensation takes off?
Yeah, when it comes to these sort of viral activations and collaborations, it's difficult to foresee all of them. Some of them is quite easy to tell. I think just us being in the industry for so long, we're able to foresee some of them, but others you're not able to. And I think the biggest advantage that you can have is you got to be on top of it the moment that it comes out. The moment that our team first heard of the Swatch AP, within 45 minutes, we already had a Swatch AP collection on the site,
Mm.
right? Not knowing what products they would drop, when they would drop, how long they would take, what they would retail for, without knowing any information. We were moving with lightning speed. So that also prepped us for when we do get more information. We are ready. We're at the helm of information, just ready to go.
Yeah, yeah. And, you're what you call a founder-led organization. You could argue Elon Musk also, kind of the founder-led there. How do you balance being a public figure and the actual business itself? Like, if you look at your social media, your own personal social media channel compared to, say, the business, how you kind of balance the two, because you can't have one gets bigger than the other, or maybe it can.
Yeah, I take a lot of lessons from, like we talked about earlier, the various celebrities and influencers and partners that we've worked with. I take a lot of lessons from them, in the sense that all of it at the end of the day is attention, right? So whether my personal brand maybe one day might outgrow the company outreach, it's not a con or downside in any way. At the end of the day, it's all still attention, but it is quite difficult. To be honest, Justin, I spend a lot of the day just working, right? We in the office most of the day. If I'm not in the office, I'm at a meeting. If I'm not at a meeting, I'm probably traveling for work. If I'm not at work, I'm thinking about work. So, when it comes to my personal brand, yes, it does play a factor, but aside from my media team handling and telling me what to do, because I'm extremely bad at it, we actually just put all of our focus into the company and building the company's presence and attention and media all over the world. We operate in 30 plus countries. So it's just about growing their presence, whether it's my personal brand or the companies in all of these different countries. So it does become hard at times to sort of find the balance between the two. But at the end of the day, it's all attention. So we just, apply pressure and apply motivation sufficient wherever we need to.
Yeah. Now, when you when I interview someone, I always finish with this question, which sometimes, it's difficult to say, but it's looking to the future, that kind of 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And it's a tough one to call. But have you got any kind of vision for what the next 5 years looks like for you?
If you ask me where would be 5 years in the future, 5 years ago, I probably wouldn't have told you we'd be here, right? We didn't have any hopes or thoughts that we'd be successful. We didn't have any hopes or thoughts that we'd be servicing hundreds of thousands of people worldwide. And I think the same thing is quite true when we look at 5 years in the future. If I can speculate, which I can only do, I would say that our goals of being the number one in the world would be achieved, if not being close to achieved. When I say number one in the world, I mean the number one go-to marketplace for anything exclusive in the world, in terms of GMV, in terms of number of customers served, in terms of regions that we service. That is what I would hope. On top of that, I hope as well to collaborate with some of these artists that we mentioned. Soon we'll have another interview where we can talk about the trade collaboration, where we can talk about, future celebrities and actors that we've worked with. And hopefully by then we'll have built up a couple of AGI companies in parallel that will only help us further exceed our goals. So that's the hope, but I can only speculate.
Yeah. Do you think you'd want hubs like a US hub, a European hub? Would that make sense for you?
100%. We already do have a couple hubs, but it's all Middle Eastern based. We've got a hub in Saudi Arabia. We've got a hub in Qatar. We've got one in Singapore. And actually the only one outside the Middle East that we've got is South Africa. So definitely in the next 3 to 5 years, in fact, I'd estimate within 18 months, we'll have a hub in the US. We'll have a hub in Europe, a couple in Europe, I would think. And then hopefully within 5 years, we'd be having hubs worldwide, from China to Tokyo to Russia to pretty much everywhere else.
Yeah. And then, Drake is obviously such a global figure. What attracts you to certain celebrities that you want to work with? Jason Derulo, Drake. Is there something in common with these people that make them a good fit for you?
I think it's the culture that resonates. Justin, for example, all of the hype that you mentioned behind artists like Travis Scott and J Balvin and all of these sort of artists who have involved themselves in the cultural space, in the sneaker space, a lot of them, just working with brands such as Nike, AP, Rolex, all of these brands that have created hype and exclusivity that we know. Customers and people in general just resonate when there's a face attached to, the culture. Travis Scott was a big one when we were starting off. Everything was about Travis Scott. Anything he touched turned to gold and became exclusive. I don't think it's much different with Drake or Jason Derulo when it comes to us collaborating with them. Another reason is, like I said, because we want to be number one in the world, I think it's only right that we work with number ones in the world, the biggest and the best that you can get. And I think we've been fairly successful when it comes to working with these people, and hopefully we just continue at that.
Yeah. And my final question, let's say you can get all of the big heads of the sports brands, sneaker brands in the room, from your Nikes to your Adidases to your Pumas to your New Balances. What would you, if you could sit down with them, what would you say? What would you say to them? What would be your advice to them?
Stop overproducing. Simple as that. These brands, and I don't blame them. I'd probably do the same thing if I was in their position, but they have found a unique market in terms of exclusivity, and they know that whatever they drop will probably sell out if done right, and they've taken advantage of it. So, they went from producing 20,000 to sometimes 50,000 to 75,000 just because they know that it will sell out. And that's sort of, over flooding the market. It's making it a bit less, it's making people a bit less inclined to be a part of it. And eventually, it'll build up and it will add up and the market will just saturate completely. So just 2 words, stop overproducing. That's it.
Yeah, but you did hint that you can sort of appreciate why they're doing it because, it's like what you call a license to print money. When you sell 10,000, there's demand for 20.
Correct.
You do 20, there's a demand. Like there is that audience for it. But as you say, you will dilute the whole exclusivity and limited edition when you're just producing in such a mass.
Exactly. And I think the main thing for these type of brands is they look at people like us and look at companies like ours in the sense where when they make a drop and they, for example, project a revenue of $10 million for it. Whereas with us on the resale market, we're projecting 30 million because there's obviously a lot more being sold at a much higher ticket value with us than with them.
Yeah.
So I think they sort of want to reverse the role, switch the tables a little bit so that they get the 30 million and we get the 10, which I don't blame them. It's good business, but eventually it will catch up to them.
Yeah. I asked you about watches. You have 7, 1 for every day of the week. How about sneakers?
Sneakers is a bit more. I'd say close to 1 for every day of the year. I've got about 400 pairs at the moment.
400 pairs.
Yeah.
And is there one pair that's like your most favorite in the world or just has memories, the first,
Yeah, definitely the first pair I got. Not the first pair I got, but the first real pair that I appreciated I got was the Off-White Chicago done by Virgil Abloh. It was actually his first collaboration with Off-White and Air Jordan. We'll put a picture of it up, but it's phenomenal. And I think I bought it at the time for close to $350. Okay. Now it's probably about 14,000.
Wow. And you've not worn them?
I've worn it. I wear all my pairs. I have to.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, I have to. Like I said, I've been involved with it from the beginning. I am essentially my own customer, so I appreciate it at a level most people will understand, but some people don't. So yes, I wear it. I have to.
Yeah. And give us a kind of inside track. What is about to drop sale that you've heard that is exciting at the moment?
That's a good one.
Is there something on its way?
Yeah. I'd say definitely pay attention to the high-end brands. They're not sleeping. They're getting awake. So I'm talking of brands like Hermes, Louis Vuitton. Expect them to collaborate with your more medium tier brands quite soon. In terms of apparel, in terms of watches, in terms of bags as well. Keep an eye out for them. I don't think that the next wave of hype will come from your Nike or Adidas. I think it will come from your high-end brands.
Yeah, interesting. A great way to end it. Adnaan, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for talking to me and answering all my questions. It was a really interesting chat.